What's up, Madridistas? If you have questions for me, Kiyan Sobhani, drop them in the chat right now. This episode of the Managing Madrid Podcast is brought to you by Tempo by Hilton Times Square, proud hosts of this year's podcast in New York City, where myself, Kiyan Sobhani, the OG Managing Madrid founder Gabe Lezra, and Madridistas live in attendance dissected Real Madrid's Club World Cup campaign and the next steps in the Xabi Alonso era. Hope you enjoyed that episode. And as always, anytime you're in NYC, including for next year's World Cup, make sure to book your stay at Tempo by Hilton Times Square.
Nice article in the Managing Madrid blog. Wonderful lads that do a great job there. And worth reading about that man there. Karim Benzema needs to rest, and the numbers reveal why.
Times ended up almost looking like a 6-3-1. Some very good writing about that on the Managing Madrid website. First-rate podcast as well. Of course, Fede Valverde was a huge part of the equation.
What's up, Madridistas? How you doing? Kiyan Sobhani here, back in the old studio. Enough travels for now. Real Madrid on vacay. I'm not on vacay, but I'm not traveling, and I'm back home. That's kind of like vacay for me, actually. Just to be able to connect with you guys a little bit more, doing a Q&A session, interactive. Don't get to do these too often, especially when there's so many games on the schedule and so much news to cover. So this is an opportunity to push forward and interact with you guys a little bit more. And I'm going to dive into the comments, address some questions. It'll be nice to speak to you guys directly and kind of see what's on your mind. And if there's anything I can do to maybe answer or clear up some stuff. I had the privilege of covering this Club World Cup on the ground and being so close to the team and being so connected with the journalists that were here, meeting some of you guys in Miami, meeting some of you guys in New York. So as far as like being connected, this past month was great for me and the Managing Madrid podcast, and hopefully good for you guys too, to get, some behind the scenes, lift the veil a little bit, connect a little bit closer. So I'm happy to answer anything. This is called the Real Madrid Q&A. If you guys want to explore anything, I'm happy to get into most things. And if you want to know how things maybe work here, I'm happy to get into anything, really. I assume the run-of-the-mill questions are pretty easy to predict. What's going on with Rodrigo? Can Vinicius and Mbappe coexist? What signings do we need? As always, I do appreciate out-of-the-box questions. You want to dive into Real Madrid history, maybe some different tactical concepts. I'm happy to do that. The more creative the question, the more likely it is to get answered, because there's only so many things I can say about the same regular talking points that we go through, right? So let's do it. I'm just going to fix this YouTube background really quickly with the press of a button, and we are good to go. All right. The first question, and I can't really go through and read these too deeply, so I'm kind of just reading almost everything. But Kunik says Konate is injury prone. Your opinion, and do we need a controller? Arda, surely developing. Can we trust him in high pressure games? Surely he washed in PSG, obviously. Well, I have some thoughts on that. First of all, Konate, the injury prone thing, I don't know if he's like more injury prone than actual injury prone players, but I do think it's fair to point out, his availability does fluctuate. He missed about a month last season in total, and that was over the course of just one injury. So it wasn't like a recurring thing all season. The previous seasons before that, he missed a little bit more time throughout the season. I will say just on Konate, it really depends on what the price point is for him, given that he does turn free next season, obviously. On one hand, I think we really need a defender. We have so many defenders on paper, and I don't trust any of them except for Dean Howson. If Militao comes back to like 80-90%, now we're talking. Now that's a real defender you can use. But I'm skeptical. Obviously, Alaba is in an even worse situation than Militao because Alaba is older. So to bring in someone like Konate would be huge. just to have him in the squad, to have that assurance policy. I'm super, super worried about the right center back position, in part because of Trent's positioning. And we saw, like, even in the games that Real Madrid did control, which, obviously that did not happen against PSG, but in the games leading up to where the team looked much better than that game, even in those games, there were question marks on defense, right? There was a high line, and whoever's going to play right center back I can already foresee it. They'll be having to have to put out fires constantly. They're going to be gambling. They're probably going to take a few red cards, if we're being honest, if it's Rudiger or Asensio. So to have someone a little bit more channeled and composed and experienced, and kind of just fits the timeline a little bit better would be huge. On the other hand, how much is Konate going to cost? I'm not sure. If it's like north of 60, 70, 80, it's a pass for me. He's not Bastoni, and he's going to be free next season. But if it's like anywhere between 30, 40, 50, I say pull the trigger. I think it'd be worth it to have that one extra season of Konate. But that's just my feeling. But it's not, it's like there are, I was gonna mention Jean Martinez's name, in part because I think he's just so promising. But the thing with him is that he's still so raw. He's probably a year or two away from being like part of the first team. But we do have enough center backs that, like, in my opinion, if you're talking about like new signings and stuff, we're done the absolute urgent necessity signings. We did the right back, we did the left back, we did the center back. That's 3. We did the coach, 4. We did the striker, who is Gonzalo Garcia, who I'm going to count as a new signing. So that's 5. And then the 6th one, and I'm just going to be kind of lame and say that in terms of the controller, I think Xabi Alonso is going to unlock the best version of Güler. And I'm not saying we don't need another one, because we did lose Modric as well. Ceballos, I don't know, like, stay, go. It's the annual Ceballos to Betis, news cycle. So who knows? But if he leaves, for sure, you need someone else. But I think you still need another midfield. But as terms of in terms of absolute urgent signings, I think we've done those ones. I did want to make a comment about Kunik's last point, which is Arda's performance against PSG. My first thought on that would be, first of all, everyone against PSG sucked apart from Thibaut Courtois. So singling out Güler isn't necessarily fair. The second thing I would say is that I'm not sure what the hell Güler is supposed to do. Real Madrid got ripped apart against PSG. We all agree on that. And part of the reason they got ripped apart is because the first line of defense doesn't defend. Easy pass behind the front 3. Then you have center backs gambling. Rudiger stepping out of nowhere. And then all of a sudden, Güler's looking around. There's like 4 PSG shirts ripping apart the midfield. What is he supposed to do in that situation? So I think it's fair to put out that context when you're criticizing Güler in that particular game. Tuzo says, I can't believe we might lose Rodrigo to Liverpool. I think Rodrigo is going to have a really solid football career when he leaves Real Madrid. And it is sad to see him go. And it's not definitive yet, but again, I think you guys who have been following the podcast know what I said about this, is that it does seem like he does have one foot out the door, and that, and Real Madrid, there was obviously a reason that they weren't playing him. And when Xabi Alonso comes out and says it was just for technical reasons, it has nothing to do with his future, obviously. It still couldn't be any more clear that he had to say that there is obviously something going on behind the scenes. But the reality is that Xabi Alonso has his hands full trying to make Vinicius and Mbappe work. And if he can't make it work, it means he's benching one of them, which means now you have Vinnie or Mbappe coming off the bench, which means Rodrigo is now even further behind. And it's also very clear to me that I think Xabi probably will not play a 4-3-3 if Mbappe and Vinnie are part of that 3 up top. It'll probably be either 2 up top, and if it's 3 up top, then I'd imagine Vinnie or Mbappe gets benched. But we have a lot of time to address this, and I'm sure Xabi Alonso is using these next few weeks to study what happened against PSG, and in his own words, to prevent future mistakes from happening. I will also say this: right before I pressed live on this podcast to go live. Um, I published a piece that I think every single Madridista needs to read, and it's over on managingmadrid.com. It's called The Ultimate Club World Cup Reflection and the Future of Xavi Ball. Shout out to our art guy, Jesus, who made this like dope Xabi Alonso graphic to entice people to click on the article, but it's pretty lengthy. It's about 3,500 words. I'd encourage you guys to all go read it after listening to this podcast. But I basically reflected on all the good and the bad of the tournament and what it kind of means. And after 6 games in, it's less a definitive take about Xabi Alonso, but more just a reflection of what we've seen so far and what it means for the future. And I think being there after the PSG game in the press conference room and listening to Xabi speak, and I think it struck me that he needed to see what happened against PSG, and he needed to see it firsthand. And in his own words, we'd be crazy to make these same mistakes again. So let's give it time. The overall tone of the article is quite optimistic, because I think if you zoom out, there was way more encouraging things than there were negative things. And the encouraging list is, how Xabi unlocked Güler, how Xabi unlocked Gonzalo Garcia and Fran Garcia, Dean Howson's arrival. Dean Howson has fit like a glove. Trent's best days are ahead of him. And you'll have players like Camavinga coming back, and you'll have more time to implement what Xabi Alonso wants to implement. And I think that PSG game, well, look, it did put a lot of it dampened the mood a little bit, but growth is not linear. And me personally, I'm thrilled that the Club World Cup happened from a selfish Real Madrid fan standpoint, and it has nothing to do with the prize money, because even though we didn't win, we racked up like 50, 60, whatever million. Prize money aside, from a pure sporting perspective, if it was important for Real Madrid specifically, and every other team will have their own opinion whether it was good for them or not, but for Real Madrid specifically, it was much needed for Xabi Alonso to have this 6-game runway before the season started to do some things before the season starts. So I'm really happy it happened. Codemaster says, hi, Kiyan. Hope you're well. Who are you most excited to see play this season? Also, everyone, remember to like and subscribe for fantastic content. That's right, Codemaster. Like and subscribe. I always forget to say it. If you're on this live right now, if you're on YouTube, hit like. And if you're not subscribed, I don't know what the hell you're doing. Just do both of those things. Thanks for the reminder. Who am I most excited to see play this season? I think it's actually a combination of some of the names I have already mentioned. Gonzalo Garcia, I think, is going to have a breakout year. I think Güler is going to take a leap this season. And I'm really, really excited to see just an overall shift in football, which I think the entire team will take advantage of and go to another level. Konate questions, I think I already addressed that. All right, here's a Carreras comment. Alberto Bitar says, Carreras was a Castilla player and Dean could have come in last summer for a much smaller fee. What are your thoughts on our youth development and transfer approach? It seems we are 1 to 2 years too late. Actually, I think in the cases of Carreras and Dean specifically, our timing was actually bang on, if you ask me. Carreras wouldn't have grown into the footballer he is right now if he had stayed at Real Madrid. In his own words today in his presentation, I left as a boy and I came back as a man. And Carreras last season at Benfica was arguably their best player. This is not even my words. This was, when we did the Carreras scouting report, as you guys have seen, Adrian Rabona, who is, a Benfica fan, said that Carreras was their best player last season. He's not getting that kind of development if he stays at Real Madrid, right? And so, sometimes they need to go and they need to come back as better, polished, more matured, more experienced players later in their career. That's totally okay. Are there cases where we shouldn't send them and we should develop them ourselves? Of course. I'm not, it's not that black and white. Every case is different. In the case of Dean Howson, I think he also in particular needed to go through what he went through. Bringing him earlier and saving some money, I don't think would have been the same for us because he wouldn't have developed the same way. He went to Juve and Roma and wasn't that exciting actually in either of those two stints. It wasn't until he went to Bournemouth. There were injuries to their starting center backs, and Andoni Iraola unlocked his best, where we saw this version of Dean Howson, which we would have never seen. So in some cases, like in the case of Dean Howson, it's better to pay more money but get a more polished, developed version than, pay a little less and then bring in someone who's not ready and developing them then with the sporadic minutes here or there are not going to develop them to the same capacity that they would, so every case is different. But in the cases of Carreras and Dean specifically, I think those those cases, I think our timing was good on those. Oscar says, hope you read the Patreon cues as I've asked a few over there. Listen, Oscar, this is purely live Q&A comment. So just drop your comment in the chat if you haven't already, okay? Abiyav Yosef says, hey, Kiyan, I'm just wondering, do you have a favorite player from the current squad? Yeah, Jude Bellingham. I won't even hide it. And those of you guys who know what he said to me in the press conference room now know that my affinity to Jude Bellingham, my bias towards him will know no bounds. Olamid says, why are we not looking at Adam Wharton? I guess the question is why would we be looking at Adam Wharton? I think he's an exciting young player. Can play DM, CM, so he's versatile in that sense. But I mean, it's not like we have a huge sample size of him, and certainly at a big club we don't have any sample size of him, to know what that translates to. But as you guys know, my rule is Juni Calafat likes him, then I like him. I don't think there's been any rumblings or scouting of Adam Wharton. Dan Yul says, hey, Kiyan, what is the most realistic solution for Vinnie and Mbappe pay? All right, 17 minutes in, our first Vinnie and Mbappe question. Well, I think, let me start with the ideal, okay? The ideal solution is not necessarily the most realistic solution. Plan A, the best solution for everybody involved, would be that Xabi Alonso gets both of these players to buy in together and they reach their ceiling, their unfulfilled ceiling, and just destroy Europe. Which means that they have to find offensive synergy and they have to sacrifice their lungs on defense for the greater good of the team, so that the team as a collective can win titles. And as an extension of that, if they're playing at their best, they're going to win their individual accolades as well. That's the ideal solution. The more realistic solution, I don't know if that's the realistic solution. I don't know. As much as I love Xabi Alonso and I believe in him, I don't know if he's able to do that with these two players, in part because I don't know if any coach could do it. The realistic solution might be that you have to bench one of them. So there we go. If there are more specific questions about Vinny and Mbappe, I can address them, but you also have to understand I've spent 3 episodes after that PSG game talking about Vinicius and Mbappe for our members. So if you don't have it yet, just get a membership and listen to everything that was said. Patreon.com/Managing Madrid, or hit join underneath this video for the YouTube memberships side of things. Joey Flores says, I just wanted to say, love your guys' content and coverage. I appreciate you, Joey. Thank you for the comment, man. Thank you for following along the channel. I appreciate you so much. Attila says, hi, Kiyan. I think you haven't been asked that before. So what do you think about the new kits and jerseys? I like them. This happens every year with me, in that when I see like the leaked images, I'm not a fan of it. I'm like, okay, it's okay. Doesn't really move the needle for me, doesn't excite me that much. But then I see the players put it on and I'm like, oh yeah, it actually does look good. So when the players have it on, it just looks better, it looks cooler. So I did actually warm up to it, and I really like our away ones. That's the one I like. What's Busquets doing with the Madrid shirt? I have zero context what that's about. Shayan Saha, super chat, says, hey Kiyan, hopefully the board gives Xabi more power giving Xabi more power is true. He needs time to implement his philosophy into this team, and he needs power to bench certain players who aren't interested. By all accounts, I think he does have that power. I don't think there is pressure from the board for Xabi Alonso to play certain players. I think that was 25 years ago. That was a thing for sure. This version of Florentino doesn't have that as much. The pressure won't come from the board. The pressure will come the moment that Xabi Alonso benches either Vinicius or Mbappe. The pressure will come from external noise, which is the press, the fans, and and by fans I mean fans of those respective players and not fans of the club as a whole who just care about the team winning. And the third place it will come from is agents, camps, leaking things, disgruntledness. There's only one way to keep those people quiet, and that's to win while you're doing it. If you go that route where you bench one of them because that's the only way for the team to win, then the only way to keep everybody quiet is to win while you're doing it. If you're losing while you're doing it, you're in trouble. So that's where we're at. So that pressure won't come from Real Madrid. The pressure will come from outside, and you have to be winning while you're benching one of them. That's that. Otherwise, it's doomed. All right. So Ali says, what needs to happen between now and the start of the season for you to be reassured that big games issues / defeats are resolved? Is it Vinnie resolution, Mbappe publicly buying into Xabi ball, etc.? Quite frankly, I don't care whether Mbappe publicly buys in or privately buys in. The important thing is that everybody buys in, including Mbappe. The second thing is that I've seen people say you're making too much of a big deal about Vinicius and Mbappe. If the team fixes its defense or the team fixes its midfield, I disagree. It starts there. If you want to fix your defense, it doesn't get sorted from the back line. It gets sorted from the top. Because you're not playing a low block. You're playing a pressing style of football. If you don't have the first line of defense defending, everybody's screwed, including a back line of Baresi, Beckenbauer, Maldini, and Sergio Ramos. Like, they would probably hold their own, to be honest, to be fair, because I just named 4 of the greatest defenders of all time. But you get my point. Everybody is screwed in the back line, including elite defenders. If you're trying to press and you're holding a high line and the first line of defense doesn't do its job, you're screwed. That's why that is at the top of my list of things that need to be addressed. Number one. Hold on, I'm going to take a note to put that on TikTok, actually. Minute 23. Send that to our editor. Okay. Let's see. FG says Konate or Saliba. I would rather we get Saliba. Konate is injury prone. I'm never impressed when I watch him. Yeah, if I had the choice between Saliba or Konate, I would take Saliba. But of course, we're talking about who's available, who's realistic, what's the market, contracts, etc. Anthony says, how was your summer vacation, in air quotes, covering the squad and enjoying the cities? You got it bang on. It's far from a vacation. It's just constant. Actually, it is literally a vacation. It's just because I enjoy it so much. I would much rather be doing that than just lying down somewhere and vacationing. Man, like what a dream. So I'm just so privileged and just lucky to be able to do this. And again, I hope that it extends to you guys so that you guys can see kind of what it's like being on the ground and you guys can benefit from it too. And one of the main things is that I get to meet you guys. So thankful for you guys in Miami and New York who came to our podcast. And if you guys missed out, you guys got to just make it a point to come out. Like if you're in those areas, like it's such a good time. These guys were like making connections, exchanging numbers. They all went out after that, just making new Madridista friends is just huge. So I hope you guys can all come out next year. Next year, I don't know how we're going to cover the World Cup. We will in some capacity, probably just focus on like where are Real Madrid's players going the most, and hopefully we can, between me and the other guys on the team, go to as many games as possible. But we'll do it again next year. We'll try to meet as much of you guys as we can. But yeah, just another moment to just say thank you to you guys who came out. All right. Mm-hmm. Muhannad says, "What do you think of this hashtag Vinny out movement? It personally pisses me the fuck off. It's ludicrous." I think it's important to realize, guys, that a lot of these things that happen are not they're not Real Madrid fans. They are generally fans of a specific player, and the enemy will always be the guy who competes with their favorite player, and that's how it goes. We've seen this. Like I've been doing this podcast long enough that it sounds like just birds chirping to me. I can't even take it seriously anymore. Mbappe fans hate Vinicius. It's all Vinicius's fault. Mbappe has the halo. With Vinicius fans, it's the opposite. Vinicius has the halo. He's infallible. Mbappe is the enemy. We've seen this with Carlo Ancelotti fans. Zidane is terrible. Xabi Alonso is terrible. Everyone is terrible. Only Ancelotti is the perfect guy. We've seen this with everybody. Everybody. Almost every player has a cult following. So when you see the hashtag Vinny out movement, just remember it doesn't come from a place from people who really, really love Real Madrid, generally speaking. And just keep that when you decide to get upset about it. You can be upset about it if you want, but just remember it probably comes from a specific player movement, and that's it. So yeah, I just at this point you just can't really take those things too seriously or think too deeply about it. Sammy says, "Hey Kiyan, why do you always want us to play only two attackers? Why aren't we allowed to play a three attackers like all the best teams, PSG or Barca? Is it because we don't have a Pedri Vitinha?" No, has nothing to do with that. I love the idea of playing with three attackers. Actually, PSG and Barca are proof that it works. You can defend with three attackers, but you have to do it with the right three attackers. And the combination of Vinicius and Mbappe being two of the three so far has proven to be disastrous on defense. And that's why. That's it. It's not that I'm against three attackers, it's that the specific combinations that we're having at this club so far, until proven otherwise, does not work. We've had an entire season to reflect on this. So far, it has not worked. So if it starts working now, and Xabi Alonso is the wizard who can make that happen, then of course I'll change my opinion on that. But so far, the sample size we have, it does not work with these specific players. Mohammed says, "Do you think Carreras will be mainly a flying wingback or a Mendy-esque role as he played at times with Benfica?" Somewhere in between, but if I had to lean one way, it would be more towards the flying wingback because he is a two-way wingback. He provides good balance. He's a good defender and he's a good attacker. I wouldn't say he is elite at either of them, but he's a solid, rounded two-way wingback who puts in a really good cross, and he's also a very good on-ball defender. On-ball ball playing left back. Questions about Dean and Carreras and scouting. Okay, I think I addressed that. Vinnie and Mbappe questions. Okay, addressed. All right, super chat from Rocky who says, "I can't be the only one who doesn't take PSG and Man City 4-0 wins over us or trouble seriously. When a club can just buy any player because of oil money, I expect you guys to win it. So therefore, it's not a big achievement." Yeah, I understand the point you're making. I do. I will also say that we've also seen plenty of times in football history that just throwing money at everything doesn't always equate to winning either. And so you have to have competency and sporting vision in place. So think about, how much money it took for Chelsea to win, just Chelsea to spend in the last few years just to win a tournament. That's the Club World Cup. And obviously, their sporting vision was out of whack despite having a lot of money. Man City, a little bit more competent. I think a lot of their money that they issued led to a lot of domestic titles. Certainly not as enough continental achievement to show for it. That there's no question. But they also had Real Madrid standing in their way. I mean, the amount of really good teams who did not win Champions League titles because of Real Madrid is actually pretty astounding if you think about it. But I understand your sentiment. I will also say that you need to balance all that money with competency and a sporting vision. It doesn't always work, but I do get what you're saying. Adal Rahman says, what do you think Xabi meant after the PSG game when he said he learned some new things about the team's strengths and weaknesses and that he'll make adjustments? I doubt he was talking about Mbappe and Vinnie. I actually would tell you that I think that's exactly what he was talking about. Does it mean that it means that he came to the realization that Mbappe and Vinnie have to be benched? Not necessarily, but it definitely is part of the equation of what we need to do to make these guys work if they're going to play together. The biggest thing for me is that I don't think he will roll up with similar mistakes. I think he will make adjustments. I don't think those are just words. At the Great says, was Carreras really the best option in the market for us? Probably was, unless you are talking about Teo Hernandez, who only had a year left on his contract, but he had a bit of a down year. He wasn't playing at his best. But I also think, like, with him going to Saudi, it's also fair to point out that maybe he wasn't realistic after all, because we're not giving him Saudi salary. So when you're competing with Saudi salary, you throw in the towel. So I would actually say Carreras probably was. We factor in he is really solid. He had a great year, and he is one of us. You know, he's homegrown. So I think that matters. I would say actually he probably was. The left back market also wasn't, it wasn't this deep pool either. So there's also that to consider. The Fireball says, praying we get rid of Mendy, even though I think that isn't possible. I think that should be something that the club is trying to do. You have your two left backs now. You don't need three, and you certainly don't need a third who doesn't fit Xabi Alonso's system at all. Ferland Mendy is the anti-Xabi Alonso philosophy left back. So I don't know how you can. Again, it goes back to the mistake of giving him that contract extension. But if you can do it, but it's not going to be easy. Warped Dash Chick says, what is your predicted starting 11 for Madrid next season? Wow. No matter what I say, I'm going to get it wrong because it's really hard to predict. You know what? It becomes even more difficult given that Bellingham's not going to be there from day one. So we can't include Bellingham in like the starting 11 against Osasuna. So let me just throw in a lineup that, again, I'm going to get wrong because I'm just going to be wrong about it, I know. But I'm just a prediction. That's what it is. Which, let's say like the December version of Real Madrid that will have Bellingham back by then. Total prediction. Courtois. By the way, if I get it right, someone please just save this and clip it and then post it on social media and pretend I didn't say I was going to be wrong. Courtois, Trent, Militao, Hausen, Carreras, Tchouaméni, Bellingham, Fede Valverde, Güler, Gonzalo Garcia, and one of Vinnie or Mbappe. All right. Giovanni says, hey, Kiyan, do you think Xabi will utilize Carvajal as a right wing back or experiment with him at right center back? No, I think he'll play as a right wing back. I think he'll just rotate with Trent. Di Brito says, oh my God, this reminds me. I always forget about Franco Mastantuono. Always. In everything I do, I just keep forgetting about that. He's coming. The question is, do you think Xabi is planning to use Mastantuono like he's using Arda Güler? I think that's why they will not sign a proper midfielder. Not exactly like Arda Güler, no. Think about what Arda Güler is doing under Xabi Alonso's system right now. He's playing as deep as Cruz was, as a deep lying quarterback. And I don't think Franco Mastantuono will play that deep. It'll be more of a, not necessarily a traditional winger, but it'll definitely be a more attacking sense. And actually, I wonder if it's more of a Jude Bellingham role to start the season. It's just, these are questions I have too, but I don't think he drops quite as deep as Güler. Vilekshan says, "Hey Kiyan, what's up, buddy?" Honey Badger says, "Why are these new age fans so impatient? Unrealistic expectations and instantly this or that player out like they are playing FIFA career mode." I don't think it's a new age thing. I think it's just an age thing. I was like this when I was 13 too. Most of these people you see doing this are usually like 13, 14, 15. You just don't know it because they're anonymous profiles. But I was like that too. I don't think it's has anything to do with the age we're in. I think it's just an age thing in general. Evans says, "Is there any chance to buy Angelo Stiller? Love your show, man, all the way from Tanzania." Awesome, man. That's awesome. Thank you so much for tuning in. Appreciate the words. Is there a chance? No, I mean, I will just go back to what I had heard before the Club World Cup, which is they pretty much used the budget to go through all the signings that they needed to go through. And I don't know if Stiller is being pursued right now, but that may change. But I don't really know other than that, buddy. Super chat from Kai Braun says, "Kiyan is just a better than Vinny. Maybe we should not renew his contract." I will say this because I think the overall statement that Kylian Mbappe is better than Vinicius is correct. But I will also say that Vinicius at his peak, which was literally probably 1 year ago, not even that long ago, definitely has a case that he is on Mbappe's level or even better. I mean, I think there was a 2-3 year stretch where Vinicius probably was the best player in the world, and certainly that Ballon d'Or he was robbed of. There's a reason why he actually deserved to win it, because he was the best player in the world. So I just would say it cautiously, because I think when Vinny is at his best, he definitely has a case. Now, if you're talking about 2022 Kylian Mbappe, the one who nearly snatched Argentina in the World Cup final in one of the greatest performances ever, that's also his peak. So that's another level as well. You could also definitely argue, and this one is a factual statement, Vinicius is definitely a better defensive player than Mbappe is. But the second point, which is, maybe we should not renew his contract. I think for what he's demanding right now and for the way he's been playing in the past year or so, I don't think the club should renew anything. I think they should say, look, this is a situation. If you want that kind of money, you're not performing at that level right now. So you just leave it. That's what I would do. All right. What are the odds that Arda is given the number 10? I haven't thought about this number 10 thing deeply at all, but why not? He's going to be a focal point. Makes sense to me. Also, I think Jude is just happy with his number too. It would make sense to go to Jude, but I think he's also happy with his number. So Arda would make sense to me. Quick break to give some love to the greatest t-shirt company, hoodie company in existence. Moji-mates.com, as you can see on the screen right now. moji-mates.com. That's where you head on over to get your favorite player on a shirt. And what you do is, when you go on the website, hit League, hit La Liga, hit Real Madrid, and then the gold mine opens up. Look at all of these shirts. Every single Real Madrid player, not only current, but also of past legends. Toni Kroos, Luka Modric, Cristiano Ronaldo was there, Karim Benzema is there. Heck, they even got Alfredo Di Stefano. Head on over to moji-mates.com for the best swag you can get and get your favorite player on a shirt or a hoodie. All right, let's get back to questions. Where are we at? Okay. Aman says, any ideas as to when the Mastantuono scouting report is going to be released? Probably next week. So right now, I'm talking to one of the guys who runs an Argentinian football podcast, and he's going to help me do it. So I'm going to do a huge deep dive on Mastantuono probably the weekend, go through a bunch of film and analytics and just come to my best conclusion, kind of like the way I did with Carreras and who was the other one? Housen and Trent, because we did those 3 episodes. I did my own thing, and then I talked to scouts, and then I brought on someone from, a different podcast to help me. Once we put it all together, it'll probably be next week. That's estimated timeline. Okay. Crystal D says, what do you think is the true role that Xabi envisions for Jude to play in his plan? I feel like it's a bit hard to tell from the Club World Cup games. I think to me, it's pretty clear in that, and he's talked about this, and when you listen to what he said about it and then watch the games, you understand what his vision is, which is he wants Jude in between the lines as an outlet, which means if Arda Güler or Aurelion Tchouameni get the ball deep, they have to look up and they have to see that Jude Bellingham is available somewhere. And that, in addition to the wing backs stretching the field high up the pitch and the forwards being mobile and roaming in the half spaces, it should mean that every single channel is occupied with a white shirt and you have options to hit. So that's where Jude fills in the role. Jude has to be available just ahead, not too deep, just ahead, and move between the lines as an outlet. And from there, he can showcase his individual brilliance on the ball. That's the role. I don't think he's going to be playing as deep as he did with Carlo. Oscar says, football aside, what's your favorite part about your job and what do you find the most challenging? Football aside, I mean, that's my favorite part is the football. So I don't, I think, it's hard to even bring anything up other than football, really. But I'll try my best. I mean, I think just the ability, I think the very first time that it really, really hit me, I had to pinch myself was, when I first started doing this, there was a moment when I was sitting in this would have been like 2016, 17 or something like that. And I was sitting in a press room, the very first time I actually sat in a press room where Zidane was speaking. And I couldn't even do anything. I just was like looking up at him and I just like, holy shit, this guy is my idol. Like, what am I doing here? It felt like I felt like very fraudulent, like being in the room. Like, I don't like, why am I here? Like, I grew up watching this guy, idolized him. I just spent like hours and hours upon days just watching compilations of his touches and roulettes. And I'm just sitting here, like, just staring at him. Every other journalist is like working, taking notes. And I'm like, holy shit. It like hit me all of a sudden, like, wow, I'm just so lucky to like be doing this. And then, just kind of like moments like that, running into Steve McManaman, in the press box and like talking about like, dude, like I'm like, you were one of my favorite players growing up, like unsung hero of that Galactico team. And the surreal moments like Jude Bellingham in the press room, just a few weeks ago. I think those moments in conjunction to like journalists I look up to as a kid growing up, and then sitting next to them and just talking to them as friends. Things like that are really cool. And obviously the travel, because I just love seeing the world. I think those are the aspects that I really enjoy. And what do I find the most challenging? I think like just time sensitive stuff. I like to go at my own pace. I like to not have to really, answer to anyone. And I'm lucky not to have to answer to anyone. But obviously with Real Madrid, a lot of this is time sensitive. So the challenging thing is like, okay, if they play, then you need to have all your analysis written and podcasts up at a certain time, because when the game finishes, people want to log on and see what people are having to say. When they wake up the next morning, they want to go and read the analysis or the news. And if you miss that boat, you miss that boat. Like, you got to be really, really on top of deadlines, and take advantage of time sensitive things and ride those waves. And you can't really have a normal life, I think, in that sense. I think that's where the challenge would come, because it's, on one hand, you get to do something you really like, but on the other hand, there's a responsibility to say no to a lot of friends and family who want your attention. You're like, I can't put this off. Like, I have to do this. Yes, that's right. I can't hang out with you because I'm watching football. Yeah, that's right. Yeah, correct. So a lot of things like that, you're just gonna get used to it. But that would be the most challenging thing, I guess. But it's not a complaint. That's just something that you have to deal with. Okay, super chat from Pranav Jadhav, who says, "What kind of midfielder will Fede be in 4 or 5 years? He won't be able to have this kind of energy forever. Does he adapt like Gerard or fade away like Kante?" Well, how old will Fede Valverde be in 4 or 5 years? He will be about 30 to 31. That's not old. I think he will have energy by then. What's true is that, like, there's a lot of mileage, and when you have a lot of mileage, then it's going to affect your body probably in some capacity, especially as you age. But I don't know, 4 to 5 years he'll be that different from what he is right now, if you ask me. I don't think he will fade away like Kante. Also, did Kante really fade away? I mean, that's kind of harsh, isn't it? He's 34 now. I mean, the World Cup was 3 years ago. He was pretty prominent in the World Cup in Qatar. He would have been like 31 at that point. Obviously, when you go to Saudi, you generally fade away, unless your name is Cristiano Ronaldo and people are watching you play in Saudi and posting your clips. But I know I don't think Fede will fade at 31. No chance, actually. I don't think he will, unless something disastrous happens. But Fede will continue to just be amazing and underrated. Jitesh Kundra says, "I think people have a very short memory. They forgot we were outclassed in every single Champions League knockout match, even in the last um, UCL win. I think we were outclassed even by Leipzig and Dortmund tactically." Yeah, I think this is a good point. I don't necessarily know what this is in reference to or what the context of you saying this is, but I will say this, that I agree with you, because I think I've seen a lot of people say, don't overreact to one game against PSG where our problems were the same with Vinnie and Mbappe together. And my response to that would be, it is not just one game sample size. It's been a year of this. So I don't know necessarily what you mean by just one game overreacting. Certain problems and certain themes will persist. They persisted until now. So it's not just one game. The PSG is not just one game of issues resurfacing. It's an extension of the entire season. Mastantuono questions. Tony says, Halamari y nada más. Echoed. Hi, Kiyan. My comment about Busquets and Madrid shirt was made during the intro when you were sharing your photo at NYC. Oh, okay. Somebody there looked like Busquets, I'm assuming. Got it. All right. Super chat. Sering Tashi says, realistically, Chabi's ceiling. Champions League trophy, he has Pep's tendencies, complicates tactics in big games. In my opinion, he can't bring Champions League. Please convince me otherwise. No, I don't think. I mean, his ceiling would be. I mean, the ceiling is a treble. Partly because the ceiling of any great manager managing Real Madrid, that should be the ceiling. And I know we haven't won a treble ever, so but that should be the ceiling for anyone coaching this team. With this kind of talent, it should be a treble. Now, more realistically, like a ceiling would be a double because that's the most we've hit in our history, as great as our history has been. But I also think like I've seen weird criticism of Xabi Alonso in quote unquote big games, which I think is pretty crazy because his big game track record is literally only at Bayer Leverkusen. And realistically speaking, Bayer Leverkusen shouldn't even have been assumed to win a big game because they're Bayer Leverkusen. They were in the relegation zone when he took over. So the fact that he got them to that level and then all of a sudden is getting criticized for big games is insane to me. First of all, no other manager managing Bayer Leverkusen at that stage would have even gotten them to a final. And to discredit him for big games, I think is crazy. So just give him time. We'll answer this question in, I don't know, a year or two. Rassi says, this channel deserves to be one of the most subscribed ones, but I don't get why the numbers are so low. Despite the contents being in full English, it deserves more. Well, thank you, man. Listen, subscribers mean nothing in this day and age. I will tell you that. We get way more views than some people who have, way, way more subscribers than us. YouTube algorithm will just show your stuff to the people who need to see it. And the channels I watch, I'm not subscribed to any of them. So we're not really worried about subscriber count. Having said that, just another reminder, like the video, subscribe to the video, but I appreciate the kind words. All right. Where are we at? I got to go pick up my son soon, actually. So I'm running out of time here. So let's see. Are there any super chats left? I think there is. From now on, we're just doing super chats and then I got to run. Carlos says, I never liked the Mbappe signing. We brought him when Vinnie was at his best, and all we needed was a striker. Holland was the signing, not selfish Mbappe. I'm not speaking about you specifically, Carlos, because I think in hindsight it's easier to say this, and I know you weren't saying this in hindsight because you just, as you clarified, you never liked it from the beginning. I will say I did like it from the beginning, and if I'm wrong, I'm wrong. I definitely was wrong about how the season panned out. I don't think that is all his fault, but I think Real Madrid were justified bringing him in at that stage. And the way I said it was that he's not a necessary signing, but he is a signing that could take you to another level. Because despite winning the Champions League, I think Real Madrid for most of that season were not impressive at all. And it was Jude Bellingham and Vinnie and Courtois heroics for most of the season that got us to where we were. So I think it was fair to, if you bring Mbappe in, you increase the margin of error and you can, instead of squeaking by through heroics, to really dominate teams. And I think the club were justified in bringing him in. And listen, we're still early. We're still 1 year into the project. We'll have to address it again. But, as I've said throughout these past 1-2 weeks or whatever it's been, especially since that PSG game, if you can't get them both to buy in to what is needed of the system, a system that demands pressing execution, then you're going to have to bench one of them. And this is the problem you've resided in right now. But it's not just Mbappe. We have to admit that Vinny also hasn't been at his best. And as I've said many times, I don't think Mbappe is to blame for that. So there's a real world here that we don't sign Mbappe and Vinny still falls off a cliff because he did after the Ballon d'Or. And when Mbappe was in the lineup with Vinny and Vinny had the left wing before the Ballon d'Or thing happened, Vinny was playing great. The Ballon d'Or derailed him. So I think that's very fair to also point out that maybe you don't sign Mbappe and Vinny's. This still happens to Vinny. Kai Braun says, any chance Eder Militao can get back to some form and start overtime and aging Rudiger? Hey, man, cameo against PSG was good. Means nothing right now, but this is the hope, Kai. This is the hope. Because if he does, it's a huge, huge plus for next season. Atiru says, as I wish it to be the case, I don't think Vinny and Kylian Mbappe can coexist for a long period of time. What do you think? P.S. I was smiling and proud when watching press conferences and hear you asking Xabi Alonso questions. I appreciate that. I don't know if I can really add anything else than what I've already said, Atiru, about this specific subject. I still think they can coexist, but they can coexist in theory more than they can coexist in practice. They can coexist in theory because Mbappe is a terrific link-up player and can play central, and Vinicius is a player on the left side who was linked up with central players before, and Mbappe has coexisted with Neymar beautifully before. In theory, I think it can work, but it's just whatever reason these two haven't clicked yet. So I think it can still work in theory, but it hasn't worked in practice. Last one, then I got a jet, pick up my son, and all that stuff. Actually, before I do that, I wanted to mention that if you're in Toronto and you haven't yet signed up your kids at TAFC Academy, do that right now. Like literally right now. Just stop what you're doing. Go to tacsports.ca. tacsports.ca. Sign up your kids at the best football academy, hands down, in Toronto. The best footy camps, the best basketball camps, best swimming camps. They got an incredible academy facilities. The coaching, I've met some of them. My God, incredible people. These are the guys you want teaching your kids how to play football. Go to tacsports.ca. Pranav says, my question, does Fede stay box to box or a deep lying playmaker? I think he's box to box. I think basically, and I'm oversimplifying it, I understand, because when the game unfolds, you see more fluidity and it's not as rigid as what I'm explaining right now. But I think that the idea and principle is Fede deep line, Güler deep line playmaker. Fede box to box, Jude stationed just above, and press and control and squeeze and suffocate opposition. That's the way I think Xabi sees it. One thing, like, you guys know our cartoonist Finn, right? You must know him by now. You see this shirt that I'm wearing. It's Florentino with the meme, the thinking meme. He's got the Real Madrid crown on his head. This was in response to everyone saying Florentino was washed and saying that, where is our old Florentino? Where is the response to this disastrous season? Florentino came out and signed Carreras, Trent. The season hasn't even started yet. Trent, Carreras, Hausen, Mastantuono, Xabi Alonso, and that's if we're done now. We might even sign more. But we've already signed 5 before the season starts. So, tranquilo. Tranquilo, tranquilo, tranquilo. If you want this shirt that Finn designed, it's only on sale until the end of July. The proceeds go to him to support his artwork, but also to support the show. So win-win, I guess. The show grows. Finn gets some deserved money in his pocket, and also you get a really cool shirt. There's a hoodie version of this. I put the link in the chat, and I'll also put the show in the show notes if you want as well. Okay? I got to sign off here, guys. It was an honor. It was a pleasure. Thank you so much for tuning in live. Thank you so much for listening. And as a reminder, like and subscribe. And we'll see you guys tomorrow. Live call for our La Liga tier members. It's like this, but face-to-face. You actually turn on your camera and you speak to me directly. That's for La Liga tier members. If you're not already a La Liga tier members, it's at 1 p.m. Eastern, same time as this. 7 p.m. CET. I look forward to meeting new faces and speaking to recurring ones. See you guys tomorrow, La Liga team members. Kiyan Sobhani signing off. Hala Madrid y nada más.